So this is a chapter of 34 verses. And these verses can be understood in sections. So we'll begin, first of all, by discussing these sections. And then we'll focus on one particular section which is very, very important. So the first section is comprised of the first 4 verses. Canto 1, Chapter 2. In these first 4 verses, Srila Suhotra Swami, he offers his respectful obeisances to Srila Shukadeva Goswami, and then he offers his respects to the Srimad Bhagavatam and to Nara Narayan Rishi and to Goddess Saraswati, the goddess of learning and good speech, and then to Srila Vyasadeva, the author. But even in these obeisances, there is a philosophical content that is being presented. In the course of the obeisances in these 4 verses, Suhotra Goswami mentions that if one hears the Srimad Bhagavatam from a pure devotee spiritual master, then the modes of passion and ignorance gradually slacken their grip on the hearer, and one will develop one's eternal rasa with Krishna. Therefore, why should one divert one's mind to anything other than Lord Krishna's service? These points are also presented in the first 4 verses. So the second section consists of verses 5 through 10. Here, Suhotra Goswami begins to speak about the sage's inquiries. Last class I gave on this Bhagavatam, we went through this. There are 6 questions, and I also indicated where the answers to the questions are to be found. So here Suhotra Goswami is stating that the sage's questions are very, very relevant because they are about Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Then in the same section, verses 5 through 10, he stresses the importance of the process of self-realization and the goal of self-realization. What is the goal of self-realization? This is very important. It is devotional service to Krishna. So, now going closer in this section, verses 5 through 10, Sri Suhotra Goswami says to attain this perfection of self-realization, which is devotional service to Krishna, one should hear the Srimad Bhagavatam from a pure devotee, and in this way, one should become a pure devotee. And since by becoming a pure lover of Krishna, one finds true satisfaction, the only and the true satisfaction. Therefore, one should reject as useless every activity that is not directed towards awakening or attraction to Krishna and the realization of our personal relationship with Him. So the next section, verses 11 through 15. Here Suhotra Goswami is continuing. He's further explaining that since Krishna is the absolute truth, one must satisfy him by devotional service. And he says that every man should therefore take instruction from the Shastra and constantly glorify, remember and worship Krishna. So again, he's particularly stressing the process of hearing, chanting, and remembering Krishna. And from these, Shravanam, Kirtanam, Vishnu Smaranam, if one is able to perform these nicely, then one will indeed satisfy Krishna. Now we come to the section which we're going to look at more carefully. Right now we'll just go through it and to the end of the chapter. But this is the section that contains verses that are so often quoted by Srila Prabhupada in his purports and in his lectures. So this section consists of verses 16 through 22. Here, Srila Suhotra Swami is describing the gradual progression of consciousness as one is overcoming the effects of the modes of material nature and is entering into pure devotional service. How again? Again, the same thing, by properly hearing the Srimad Bhagavatam and serving pure devotees. So in this way, hearing Srimad Bhagavatam, hearing from pure devotees and serving pure devotees, this results in the gradual transcendence of the soul. The soul gradually is coming up out of the grip of the three modes of material nature. And progressively, one comes to live in his eternal rasa with Krishna. So many times there's different forms of this one question. And this one question is, how can we make advancement, or how can we make more rapid advancement? This question is asked in so many different forms, but essentially this is the nutshell of it. And so these verses in this section, 16 through 22, are giving the direct, straightforward, clear answer to this question in all of its forms. That we have to hear the Srimad Bhagavatam from pure devotees while we serve those pure devotees. And of course, hearing from them is, as we shall see, excellent service, just to hear. And so this is what we have to be doing. Everything else is there, of course, detail, and detail is important. But this is the basic answer to this question: how can we make progress in devotional service? Hear from pure devotees, this is Srimad Bhagavatam, and render service to the pure devotees. And the result of this is that the gunas, and you know, besides meaning mode, guna also means rope. So this image is there of the soul actually being encircled or knotted by the ropes of material nature. So by hearing from pure devotees and serving pure devotees, these ropes become loose, the knots slacken, and the ropes fall off. And this way the living entity, something like a balloon, you know, once the rope tying it down is cut, it naturally rises up and enters into the eternal rasa with Krishna. So the last section, we'll be coming, as I said, we'll be coming back to this section we just spoke of, 16 through 22. But now let's go on to the last section, the last two sections. First, section number 5, verses 23 through 29. Here Suhotra Goswami is explaining Lord Krishna's position as being beyond the modes of nature. You see, we've heard about the soul rising up above the modes of material nature and going to Krishna. This is natural because Krishna is always above the three modes of material nature. So, therefore, those who are serious about liberation, they worship Krishna only. For He is the supreme goal of life. And therefore, since everything auspicious can be achieved through pure devotional service, why should we divert our mind to sense gratification or anything independent of Krishna's service? Demigod worship or anything like that. You see, these what are called laukika. Laukika means ordinary. So the whole material world is filled up with so many laukika engagements, ordinary engagements, which are based on this body, which is not the self. Yes, the body is a product of modes of material nature, and all these laukika engagements are also produced out of the modes of material nature. But these are diversions. These are hindrances. So alaukika means transcendental. So one should, this Bhagavat Dharma, Bhagavat Bhakti Yoga, this actually means giving up all this ordinary mundane affairs and focusing on one thing, bhakti, which is developed by the process that we're hearing about in this chapter. Then in the last section, the 6th section of verses of this chapter, Suhotra Goswami in verses 30 to 34 is now beginning to enter into the answer to one of the specific questions of the sages about the Lord's incarnations. So here he says that the Lord, although transcendental to the material world, which was the subject of the previous section, 5th section, although Krishna is transcendental to the modes of material nature, first he still creates the material world, and then he maintains his creation. He enters into his creation to maintain it. And he does this to reclaim the misguided conditioned souls who aimlessly are seeking happiness in the material world. He comes into this world as the super soul. And his only business as super soul is to prompt these living entities to reawaken their relationship with him. He also incarnates in so many avatar forms to deliver these conditioned souls externally. And he also empowers suitable living beings to act on his behalf. This type of avatar is called Shaktivesh. So there are avatars which are Vishnu Tattva, the Lord himself, but there are also avatars which are jivas, not ordinary jivas. They're eternally liberated souls generally. And they're empowered by Krishna to act on his behalf. So that is an overview of chapter 2, Canto 1, Srimad Bhagavatam, Divinity and Divine Service, in 6 sections. Now we want to go back to section number 4, verses 16 through 22. So text 16 begins, Sushusho Shradidhanasya So Shushusho means one who is engaged in hearing. This chapter is simply stressing the hearing process, hearing, chanting and remembering. So Shushusho, one who is engaged in hearing, Shradhanasya. Now here Prabhupada in the word for word translates this as with care and attention. But Shraddha means?
Faith.
Faith, yes. And also, I told you, I mentioned this word Laukika already, so ordinary. So there is ordinary faith, Laukika Shraddha, and then there is Shastriya Shraddha. So what is being discussed here by Suhotra Swami is Shastriya Shraddha. The development of faith in Shastra, particularly the best of the Shastras, Srimad Bhagavatam. Laukika Shraddha is faith, but of course then the faith can be in so many things. Even in Krishna consciousness, there is a form of Laukika Shraddha, ordinary faith. Devotees who are not very versed in Shastra, then they pick up from different classes or different talks, or sometimes it's hard to say where they pick it up. And they pick up different advices and statements and indications of what Krishna consciousness is. Sometimes you hear it in the question, the hand goes up. I once heard someone said, somewhere in Prabhupada's book, somewhere, one purport, I think, I'm not very sure, but, and then, some big question comes up. So this is like the ISKCON version of Laukika Shraddha. So it's not precise. In the material world, of course, there's so many forms of Laukika Shraddha, faith in any and all nonsensical things. So we naturally give that up to enter into this Krishna consciousness movement. But we have to understand really what this Shastriya Shraddha means. Faith in the Shastra, it means we have to know what Shastra is telling us. So we have to learn. It's not enough, according to this chapter of Srimad Bhagavatam, if we really look at what this chapter is saying, and the conclusion is it's not enough just to have some vague idea of what Shastra is saying, but one should become learned. Prabhupada translates this, Shradhanasya, with care and attention. This is really indicating Shastriya Shraddha. You see? And then hearing with care and attention what? Vasudeva Kataruchi. The message of Lord Krishna, Lord Vasudeva Krishna. Ruchi. Ruchi means taste, means there's an affinity, an attraction to this hearing process. This is very important. This is necessary for developing this Shastriya Shraddha, because you cannot capture Shastra, the meaning of Shastra, simply by intellectualism. It's not a dry academic thing. There must be ruchi, there must be taste. With this taste comes actual realization of Krishna. So, this is the topic raised in text 16. Vasudeva Kata Ruchi. How to attain this attraction to Krishna, Krishna Kata, through hearing carefully, with faith. Sharmahat Sevya Vipra. One has to render service to the pure devotees. Those who are Punya Tirtha, cleansed of all vice. Punya Tirtha means such devotees are as good. Going to visit such devotees, see them, hear from them, is as good or even better as going to bathe in the Ganga. It's even better than bathing in the Ganga. Why is that? Because, yes, when one touches the holy river Ganga or any other holy land, one becomes purified. But the heart may not change. Therefore, in Bengal, there's this saying, every day 10,000 prostitutes bathe in the Ganga. Which means they go in the Ganga and they're purified, but they come out and they go back to their sinful activities. So they're bathing every day, that's very good, but they remain prostitutes, you see, because the heart doesn't change. But when one can hear from a pure devotee, Vasudeva Katha, Krishna Katha, then, as we shall, this is the topic, as we shall hear, then the heart is actually purified, and one's intention, what one intends to do with one's life in this body, that intention changes. So the next verse, text 17, Shrinvatam svakata Krishna punya shravana kirtana hridiyantastoye badrani vidunoti suhrit satam. Sri Krishna, the personality of Godhead, who is the Paramatma, super soul in everyone's heart, and the benefactor of the truthful devotee, cleanses desire for material enjoyment from the heart of the devotee who has developed the urge to hear his messages, which are in themselves virtuous when properly heard and chanted. So this is very nice point. Punya Shravana Kirtanaha. Punya means pious activity. There's the term punya karma, which is the opposite of vikarma. Vikarma means that karma or work, conduct, which heads downward into hell. Vikarma, that term one often hears, bad karma. Bad karma is vikarma. And punya karma, good karma. Karma which elevates one. And today more and more people are interested how they can develop good karma. This verse is telling us how to develop the best karma. Shrinvatam svakata Krishna. One should develop the urge to hear the messages of Krishna. Punya Shravana Kirtana. Then this hearing and this chanting, that is the most virtuous activity. Why is that? This comes back what I was saying before. Bathing in the Ganga, visiting a holy place. So many holy places are there in India. This is also punya. This is very pious to do that. But this is the best kind of punya. Why? Hriyanta hiya badrani vidu noti sufritsatam. Because by this type of pious activity, hearing about Krishna, this, shall we say, this attracts the mercy of the Lord who is in the heart. And that mercy, what is the result of that mercy? Hridiyantas hiya badrani. That the desire for material enjoyment is cleansed. It is called here abhadrani. Abhadra means inauspicious. So these desires which provoke us from within to engage in sense gratification, they're extremely inauspicious. But nobody can get rid of them by ordinary means. You see, by going to some psychologist or psychiatrist, laying on the couch, telling what happened to you when you were small, it's not going to help you to get rid of these sinful desires. You see, there is no human method that will do this. Even if one sometimes, also in the history of Christianity, there was a type of renunciate. In the early days of Christianity, they were called stylites because they used to perch upon the top of a pillar. Stylus means a pillar, I think, in the Greek language. You know, like there's a Greek pillar, and then it had a flat top. And they would climb up to the top of that and chain themselves there. And they couldn't get down. And that's how they would live. And people would come by, oh, this is a holy person, and throw up some bread or something. And that way he could have something to eat. And so in this way, they would sometimes stay for years, chained to the top of a pillar. Or in India, we've heard of yogis who lock themselves up in a little box. They have their disciples lock them in a little box. And they stay in the box for 1 whole month, or 1 day short of a whole month. You know, the 1 day, dark moon day, the box is unlocked and they give darshan. So this may check the physical engagement in sense gratification, but what about the mind? What about the heart? And just being locked in a box or staying on top of a pillar is not going to change what's going on in the mind and heart. So that change, that is only affected by the mercy of the Lord within. And we attract that mercy by this process. Srimatam Svakata Krishna. Punya Shravana Kirtana. This type of pious activity specifically attracts that mercy. Hridyantastohi abhadrani, all the abhadranis, dirty things in the heart, desires for sense gratification. They are purified. And also this, the vidunoti suhrit satam, that the Paramatma is the benefactor of the truthful, the honest devotee. And so, by his grace, vidunoti, such a devotee is cleansed from within. So this is a very interesting definition of the term truthful or honest. It's one who undergoes this process and does not take to some other process. Again, climbing on top of a pillar or something, or locking oneself in a box, or some other kind of, fanciful austerity. Which is meant for what? What is it really meant for? It's meant to attract public acclaim. These things will not help purify the heart. You see? But being locked in a box, little box, big padlock on the outside, then everyone can be pretty sure, well, he's some kind of sadhu because he can't be engaged in sense gratification while in the box. And then when one day he comes out, let's all go have his darshan and get his blessings. You see, that's what he does. He gives his, what's called ashirvat, his blessings. And he has so many followers, and this is of course some austerities are involved, but this is also supplies everything one needs. That one day, because he's a yogi, he eats some rice. Rice is given to him. So there are so many like this. When I was in a place called Gokarna, I was hearing about a sadhu Baba who used to walk around Gokarna. He lived in a cave, and he would come out of the cave and visit different temples and give his darshan, but he would walk only on his hands. With his feet straight up to the air, walking on his hands. And it's kind of a hilly place, Gokarna, so one can imagine going up and down the hill on his hand. So this is, a good show, and people will flock to see this Sadhu Baba walking on his hands. Isn't this amazing? We can't do that. He does that. He must be special. But this is not the process to purify the heart. This is not the process to attract the mercy of Paramatma. Therefore, this is dishonest. you see. Because it is not the process, the Bhagavad process. Therefore, from Bhagavad point of view, we can be sure that, hand-walking Baba, his heart is still filled with abhadra, inauspicious things. So why is he walking on hands? Just to attract attention to himself. That's his claim to fame, but that does not make him punya tirtha. That does not make him a person who is worth visiting for one's own spiritual purification. So this is a very interesting definition of truthfulness, honesty. One who is following this process. And this brings to mind the verse in the Bhagavad Gita, apichat suratro bhajate mamanyaniva. That one who is engaged in this process, they may even have some trouble, they may even seem to slip, fall back. But Krishna warns, he's still a sadhu because he's doing this. He's engaged in this Bhagavad Dharma, Bhakti Yoga. So even if he has performed some abominable activity, don't think that he's just an ordinary person if he's engaged in this process. So this is significant. So going on to text 18, this is a famous verse. Nasta praeshu abhadreshu ityam bhagavata sevya bhagavatyuttama shloke bhaktir bhavati naishtiki. By regular attendance in classes on the Bhagavatam, nityam bhagavata sevya. So this is not a whimsical thing. This is not Bhagavatam whenever we like to hear it, or this Bhagavat Saptaha. Once in a while someone comes to our village or town to speak on Bhagavatam for 7 days, and we go to that and hear about Rasa Lila, and then go home thinking that the Rasa Lila is just mundane, lusty affairs. No, Nityam Bhagavata Sevya, regularly attending the Srimad Bhagavatam. And this also means Nityam Bhagavata Sevya, to regularly render service to the Bhagavata devotee. Again, pure devotee, as explained before. So these are simultaneous. There's Bhagavata Shnanam and Bhagavata Gya. So Bhagavata Shnanam means the non-moving Bhagavatam, the book Bhagavatam. And Bhagavata Gya means the Bhagavata that goes here and there, the devotee, who moves around to preach. So this verse equally applies to both. Then, all that is, so if we render service to the Bhagavatam and the pure devotee, hearing from them, then all that is troublesome to the heart is almost completely destroyed, and loving service under the personality of Godhead, who is praised with transcendental songs, Uttama Shloka, is established as an irrevocable fact. Bhakti Bhavati Naishtiki. Naishtiki means firm faith. We were hearing about Shraddha before. So when that Shraddha matures and becomes irrevocable, there's no way that one can lose one's faith in this process anymore when one comes to that stage. So that is Naishtiki Bhakti. Sometimes there's question about this Prayeshu, Nasta Prayeshu, Abhadreshu, that the inauspicious things are destroyed almost to nil. Prayeshu. And there is some doubt sometimes voiced. What does that mean? So that means there is a mercy given to us so that we can engage in the sadhana bhakti process. That is this, Nasta Prayeshu Abhadreshu. That in sadhana bhakti, one follows the rules and regulations, regulatory principles, and this is also not by one's own, willpower that one can do this. This is made possible by the Lord within. But in that state of practicing sadhana bhakti, following the rules and regulations by the grace of the Lord, we're still aware that there's material desire. It's lurking around on the edges of our consciousness, trying to find a way in. You see? And as our sadhana, we have to keep it out. So in this way, we are in a position to demonstrate to our spiritual master without and Chaitya Guru within that we are serious devotees. This is how one becomes a candidate for further mercy and further progress, that at this stage we show that we're serious about keeping the vows of sadhana bhakti. So we can, by the mercy of the Lord, keep those vows. That's the point here. Nasta prayeshu vadreshu. Enough is destroyed so that we can follow these principles. And that is a great mercy. That is also not by our willpower. No one can, you won't find anybody in this material world who can just decide one day, alright, I'm going to follow the four regular principles. You see? Not by one's own willpower, it's not possible. Because we don't have power over these abhadras. These abhadras are deep, deep, they're also known as vasana in the Bhagavatam. Vasana means these powerful urges that pour into the arena of our conscious mind. I've explained this before, how the conscious mind is only a small part of our total identity. Most of who we are as spirit soul is submerged in the tamoguna, and that part of our nature that is submerged is called the subconscious. And in the subconscious, there are the samskaras, all the impressions of everything we have done in every body that we have had since the beginning of our conditioned existence. Everything is stored there. That's called samskara, all the impressions. And vasanas, all the urges, all the desires. Which, you see, these different desires, in total, they add up to 8,400,000 species. See, all the desires of all the species of life, they're all stored down there in this basement of our consciousness. And the mind, this surface mind, surface awareness, is called guna pravaha. It's always agitated by the modes of material nature. And because it's agitated, therefore, these vasanas, these samskaras, they pour into the mind from below. They keep pouring in, and people cannot control their senses as a result. They're too powerful. The agitated mind is actually inviting them to come. Because agitated mind means I don't know what to do anymore. I want to be happy, how to be happy, I don't know. And then these desires come, here's how you can be happy. See? Have illicit sex, eat meat, do this nonsense, that nonsense. Try this, try that. This is how you can become happy. And they just follow, I want to be happy. Alright, I'll do this and that. And this is how they become candidates for going to hell. So yes, the point is, on our own we can't do it. So this is already a great mercy being described here. How to become nicely situated in sadhana bhakti. And it's not mysterious. One just has to hear it regularly. Nityam Bhagavata Sevya. Serve the pure devotees. Regularly. So going on. Yes, now Suhotra Goswami is talking about the result. Now we're looking more closely at what happens if we follow the process he is recommending. Tadarajas tamo bhava kama lobdayas choye chitta eter anavritam chittam sattve prasidati. As soon as this naistiki bhakti, this irrevocable loving service is established in the heart, the effects of nature's modes of passion and ignorance, such as lust, desire, and hankering disappear from the heart. Then the devotee is established in goodness and he becomes completely happy. Stitam sattve prasiddhati. This is actually transcendental goodness. Because why? Prasiddhati is satisfied. See, if one does not have this mercy, then one finds a mode of goodness boring. You see? To be in mode of goodness, for someone whose mind is still guna pravaha, agitated, it's boring. And he can't be happy, can't be satisfied. Oh, I have to chant 16 rounds again. You see? Why I'm only taking this prasadam? So, this is transcendental happiness, Vasudeva Sattva platform. When one is satisfied with this life of Krishna consciousness. So this is a first symptom of actual advancement in devotional service. Very important symptom. That one is satisfied simply being a devotee. One feels that my life is complete. My life is perfect. Why should I want to do anything else? Why should I want to, give up the book distribution, the preaching, and go to university and earn some big degree or whatever. Do this or do that. This is enough. Then text 20. Evam prasana manaso bhagavat bhakti yogataha bhagavat tattva vijnanam mukta sangha sajayate. So, thus established in the mode of unalloyed goodness, the man whose mind has been enlivened by contact with devotional service to the Lord gains positive scientific knowledge of the personality of Godhead in the stage of liberation from all material association. Let's look at this closely. Evam prasana manasa. So the mind is prasana, satisfied in this pure goodness. And this is Bhagavat Bhakti Yogata. This is to be in yoga with Bhagavan through the process of bhakti. Fixed in a spiritual position. And as a result of this being fixed in one's spiritual position, then Bhagavat Tattva Vijnanam, then one gains realization. Vijnana means realization of the truth, Tattva of Bhagavan. Mukta Sangha Sajayate. This is going on the liberated platform. This is referring to a stage of advancement called Jivan Mukta. That while one is within this body, one is still Mukta, one is liberated. So one is not forced by the body to do anything in this stage. One is rather using the body in Krishna service. The body is understood to be simply an instrument, simply a thing to be used in Krishna service. Nothing more. So then, text 21. Vidyate hridaya grantis chidyante sarvasamshaya kshiyante chasya karmani drista evatmanishwari. Thus the knot in the heart is pierced, and all misgivings are cut to pieces. The chain of fruitive actions is terminated when one sees the self as the master. So the hard knot, Hridaya Granta, this is what is binding us to this material world. This is the principle that is keeping us life after life in the cycle of birth and death. So at this stage, Mukta Sangha Sajayate, Jivan Mukta, that knot is cut. That means this is the last body. There's no more knot to hold us to take another birth. So all doubts, all gaps in transcendental vision are destroyed, and the chain of karma, Kshiyante chasya karmani, the chain of karma, is terminated. When one sees the self as the master, drishtva evatmanishvare. So, Atma means self and also Paramatma. This is how we should understand this verse. So, the self becomes the master at this stage. Just like we say, Goswami, master of the senses. So, the liberated soul is no longer servant of the senses. So he's master. But he's mastered by the grace of the Parameshwar, the supreme controller, the supreme Lord, Paramatma. And then, last verse of this section, section number 4. Bhaktivaibhava nityam bhaktim paramayam mudha Vasudevi Bhagavati kurvanti atma prasadinim. Certainly, therefore, since time immemorial, all transcendentalists have been rendering devotional service to Lord Krishna, the personality of Godhead, with great delight, because such devotional service is enlivening to the self. So this verse is indicating the stage even beyond liberation. Muda, and this is not mudha, this is muda. The word muda, M-U-D-A, means with great delight. Paramaya, supreme. Supreme delight. Prasadinim means to be enlivened. So this verse is telling us that, just like in Gita also, in the 4th chapter, that verse, how does it begin? Remember that? Many Bhavo Gyanatapasa. Yeah, Vitaraga Bhaya Kruda, Manmaya Mahova, Upashyata. Bhavo Gyanatapasa. Putan Madbhav Magata, yes. So there have been many before you, Arjuna. Bhavo, many transcendentalists who attained love of God. This is, were purified of heart and attained Puta Madbhava, this ecstasy of love of Krishna. They have attained this Vita Raga Vaya Krodha by giving up. And these have been mentioned here too. Raga, Bhaya, Krodha. Attachment, fear, anger. These are symptomatic of the lower modes of nature. And purifying oneself, jnana tapasa, by transcendental knowledge and by austerity. And in terms of this chapter, that jnana tapasa simply means the hearing process, as we have been taught here in these verses. Hearing Srimad Bhagavatam, serving pure devotees. This is sufficient jnana tapasa. So this verse is very similar. Since time immemorial, all transcendentalists have been rendering devotional service to the Lord Krishna, the personality of Godhead, with great delight. Paramaya Buddha. Bhaktim Paramaya Buddha. Because such devotional service is enlivening to the self. Yes, so this is the way that one attains one's transcendental position in the spiritual world, established in one's own rasa, loving relationship with Krishna. Alright, so that was an overview of this very important chapter 2, Divinity and Divine Service of the Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 1. Any questions? Yes?
Maharaj, related to the verses 8 to 10, there's it's spoken about the occupational duties, and it's mentioned that one should reject all the activities not related to Krishna. So we mentioned that when I was joining, it was quite clear that there are different activities which are not so favorable to practice of Krishna consciousness. Now I would maybe say that it's like a fashion preach that whatever one is doing, wherever one is situated, whatever, it's just, it doesn't matter, it's just a question of the internal thing. So this verses and this you mentioned seems to indicate, for me it's a little paradox. Could you kindly elaborate a little that what is the relation between the internal and external activities, and when we are preach to people, should we just how should we emphasize? Should they try to change any of the external, or just leave everything like they are?
Well, this is a question that I don't think that there can be the same answer, same precise answer for everyone. The first point, dharma svanustita pungsam. So svanustita dharma means dharma executed in terms of one's own position. So the context of these verses 8 through 10 is referring to varna ashram dharma. So here's one thing. This verse is saying, for those who are working in their varna ashram dharma, if those duties do not provoke vishpakshena kata arati, an attraction to hear about the Supreme Lord, then their shrama, useless labor. But the thing is that varna ashram dharma is actually intended. The idea of varna ashram dharma, the reason why it is Krishna's own social system, as he declares in Bhagavad Gita, is that varna ashram as a whole, the system as a whole, is in the mode of goodness. So therefore, it is the easiest lifestyle, to use that word. It's not a very good word, but people know what it means. So anyway, it's the most suitable lifestyle to be in for beginning devotional service, because there's nothing in varna ashram dharma that presents a major obstacle to advancement in Krishna consciousness. If, as I said, it is executed as it is intended to be by Lord Krishna, because the whole system is in the mode of goodness. But still, because the living entity is can in any position, even in a very good position, can wrongly exercise his power of choice. So he can cling to his varna ashram duties and use them as an excuse for not engaging in devotional service. I'm too busy, I have my responsibilities, this, that, the other thing. This is not really varna ashram problem. This is not really a problem with the varna ashram. This is a problem with this living entity. So then Bhagavatam is saying, if that's the case, if he's using his svanustita dharma as an excuse not to develop taste for hearing about Krishna, then what he's doing is just so much useless labor. And the verses go on to say, that the result of, yes, that these Dharmasya Apavargasya, all the occupational engagements, Brahmana, Kshatriya, Vaishya, Shudra, they are meant for Apavarga, which means liberation. That's the intention, that's what they're meant for, you see. So therefore, one who is situated in these varnas and ashrams, but is not, his own life is not aimed at this liberation, then he is engaged, what's called here kama, and sense gratification. And this is not permitted. They should never be performed for material gain. Furthermore, according to sages, one who is engaged in the ultimate occupational service should never use material gain to cultivate sense gratification. You see, so the point of dharma is not actually to a means to get artha and kama. These two middle, dharma, artha, kama, moksha. What Bhagavatam is saying, dharma is intended to bring us to moksha. And artha, kama, they may be there of their own accord, but one should not make them the goals of life. One should not intend for them. One should not work for them. They will come by themselves. One should avoid becoming entangled. And then, life's desires should never be directed towards sense gratification. One should desire only a healthy life or self-preservation, since a human being is meant for inquiry about the absolute truth. Nothing else should be the goal of one's works. So this is Jyvasya tattva jigyasha. Jyvasya means this life, tattva jigyasha, inquiry into the absolute truth. This is what one should live for. So this is interesting because this is within the context of Varna Ashram Dharma. Now there is no Varna Ashram Dharma. So the life as it stands now is the direction of the modern civilization, and we see this again and again in Prabhupada's books, is aimed at artha and kama. You see? What we have heard before is that a person can misuse his position in Varnashram Dharma, which is actually meant for liberation. We're supposed to go from Dharma to Moksha in Varnashram Dharma. That's the intention of it. But a person can choose to misuse his position in Varnashram Dharma, to go after artha and kama, and that's condemned. But now we have a civilization which is clearly not aimed at moksha at all. I mean, that's completely out of the picture. That's out of everyone's mind entirely. And what everyone is urged to work for is artha and kama. That's what it's all about. I mean, the education is openly teaching the children that artha kama, artha kama. So, therefore, yes, to stay engaged in, and this, serious devotees, they will tell you to work outside in the material world, try to maintain a family and all these things is very, very difficult for one who wants to make progress in this. So, some may have to do it because of their responsibilities and so on. They've gotten themselves entangled. So Prabhupada used to say that they should, as much as possible, make their life at home like a temple and hear and chant, make hearing and chanting the center. But there's often difficulties in that. in the family, people don't, some family members don't like, neighbors don't like, this, that, the other thing. So it's troublesome. But obviously, in our preaching, I don't think that if we understand what this chapter is telling us, that it is a good policy to recommend to people that, yes, you go work out in that society, which is not Varnashram society, which is this Artakama society, which is specifically condemned by the Bhagavatam. I don't think it's a good policy to recommend. People may have to do that, you see. And so if they're in a position where they feel they have to do it, somehow obliged to do it, then of course it's also not so good to break them over their heads with chapter 2, canto 1. But then Swami gave a cable and everything you do will be useless. Because that will discourage them. We have to give them hope. So that we, yes, that we can give them hope. And encourage them to come to the temple as much as possible and get association. But we shouldn't, I think that would be very misleading to talk about this Kali Yuga society as if it is Varnashram Dharma, which it is not, obviously. And say, yes, you can, as long as you do your duties for Krishna, because it is not so easy in this type of culture. And, there's plenty of testimony from sincere devotees who are in that situation. They're always lamenting. I wish I wasn't. I wish I didn't have to do this, but I have to do it, so I'm doing it. And they're hankering for that. And that's the idea. If they're sincere, then they're hankering for that day when they can get free from it. And they'll actually really value that when that opportunity comes and take full advantage of their new liberated position. Yes?
Gurumara, from the Canto Amante, what's the situation of those devotees who are maybe directly doing service for the preaching movement, but still they don't have so much inclination to this hearing and chanting, which is mentioned in this verse?
Well, the less, you could just, as a general rule, the less inclination there is for hearing and chanting, then the more danger one puts oneself in. That's for sure. Because the ruchi, the taste of spiritual life is clearly announced here by Suhotra Swami to be coming from this Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya. So if we are slack in that, then we are exposing ourselves to attack of the lower ruchi. Because ruchi must be there, some taste for something must be, no one's going to be dry. No one is dry, just without any taste. There's nobody like that. Scandinavians like to pretend like they're like that. It's a Scandinavian culture, face like a brick wall. Showing as little excitement as possible, but in point of fact, nobody can exist without some kind of taste. And you see, in the world, Scandinavian was always thought of as a very place where there's a lot of sense gratification going on. And it is because of that, because the people are they are dry in one sense. They're lacking higher taste, so therefore they're very eager for the lower taste. That's the result. So to be apathetic towards hearing and chanting, this is placing one in a dangerous position. One becomes spiritually dry, then materially wet. Materially, one, like Prabhupada said, go fishing but don't get wet. So you're talking about assisting the preaching movement, and that means one gets, comes in touch with the material world, because we preach out there in material society. So if one is not fully satisfied within, then one comes in touch with the material world. One's going to, so to speak, get wet while fishing. One will find this material realm of activities somehow attractive. Anything else? Yes?
It was emphasized in verses 16 to 22, the hearing. And well, this was mentioned in the Chaira Dharma lectures by His Holiness Bhaktivaibhava Maharaj that Diksha means like the liberation, and Shiksha means ultimately then entering to the spiritual world through accepting or adopting the mood of the one is listening. So this hearing, when it's mentioned, I'm like trying to figure out what we actually mean, the real hearing, and what it means to to follow the mood, to accept the mood one is listening, which is related to the Shiksha.
Well, this is one of those points which I think is easy to grasp for one who is Sharalata, simple at heart. For one who's Kutila, crooked, it becomes a problem. And Prabhupada spoke of catching up the mood of the spiritual master. So one should be able to catch up the mood of the spiritual master by observing what the spiritual master is doing, following his example. It should be easy, but if it becomes mysterious, what does that mean to catch up the mood of the spiritual master? Then I think there's something, there's some crookedness somewhere, that's all I can say. Because the spiritual master, Srila Prabhupada, our founder Acharya, did not at all intend to make anything mysterious, esoteric. He was an open book. But he himself did say that it is a challenge to catch up the mood of the spiritual master. Because the mood of the spiritual master, what does that mean? What does it mean? It means for Krishna only. That's his mood. Like I don't know if when I was here, if I told one of the lectures here, but some recent lectures I've been mentioning. A devotee from South Africa who came to Mayapur and was performing great austerities. The devotees were quite impressed that he was eating so little and chanting so many rounds, sleeping so little. He was doing like the Babajis do. And so devotees were impressed by him, and they mentioned to Prabhupada. And Prabhupada he didn't make a comment. He was silent. And then this devotee even increased his austerity. He was chanting more rounds and eating even less and sleeping even less. He was really getting extreme. And so then Prabhupada was told of this development. And Prabhupada then he spoke, he said, it is all bogus. He said, it is all simply I want. All I want. You see, so if one's even seemingly very serious spiritual life is based on this principle, what I want to do, then that is not catching up the mood of the spiritual master. We should want to do what the Guru wants us to do. Prabhupada said that in another instance in England. he said one must be, someone asked Srila Prabhupada, I believe it was a question about how to remain steady in devotional service. How to be very serious and steady and not have difficulties with the senses and mind. Prabhupada said one must be ruled by one's spiritual master. So this is what it means to catch up the mood. The spiritual master, Srila Prabhupada, we see, our founder Acharya, he lived only for Krishna, for Guru and Krishna. What he did was what his Guru Maharaj wanted him to do. What Krishna wanted him to do, what Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu wanted him to do. So a servant, to catch up the mood of the spiritual master, means to simply be a servant. And Prabhupada used to speak about his godbrothers and the Gaudiya Math, all the trouble they got into after the departure of Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, and he used to analyze it to one point, that they wanted to be Acharya. They had some plan to become great, you see? Just like this South African devotee wanted to become known as a great renunciate, great devotee chanting so many rounds. They had some, it becomes a program of self-interest. I want. So, to such persons then this phrase, to catch up the mood of the spiritual master, seems very mysterious. What does that mean? It's actually very straightforward what it means, but one's mind has become very crooked and it's hard to see. Anything else? Alright then, Srila Prabhupada ki jai.